So we're going to begin talking about betrayal trauma and how to treat the betrayed partner. I'd like to talk for a few minutes, though, about the evolution of how we've come to treat partners who've been betrayed, the history of that evolution, and then go into the phases of betrayal trauma, the impacts of betrayal trauma, and how it can cause misdiagnosis, and finally, different types of betrayal trauma. The original way that therapists dealt with betrayal trauma and secret sexual behaviors is treating it the same as infidelity. And so I want to take a moment here to pause and just clarify something. What we're talking about in this course is not infidelity. It's not the person who had acted out with a sex worker or maybe had an indiscretion on a trip or something like that. What we're talking about on this course, to be clear, and we'll talk about why in a few minutes, is somebody who's had a secret life that they've maintained through dishonesty, manipulation, reality control, and other forms over their partner so that they can continue to engage in their secret sexual life. But originally, therapists treated all types the same. Whether somebody had a one-time indiscretion and made a mistake, or whether someone for years has had multiple relationships and affairs and lied and kept it secret and gaslit their partner. And so when they did that, it often caused the person who had been cheated on a lot more harm. Because when you deal with infidelity as a couple, you have to address it. You have to create healing and heal not just the different wounds from the cheating, the dishonesty, and the hurt on the different levels, but then you need to work to heal the relationship. Here, when you're dealing with a systematic approach to harming the other person in order to maintain your secret sexual life, you have to deal with a lot more. And so initially they were dealt with all in one way. And then slowly, in the 1980s or so, some people in different pockets of the country at the same time started to realize that their own sexual lives were out of control. And they started to think about how they could get help. Some of those people belonged to support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and had gotten sober using that model from alcohol and drugs. And they got together with other people when they shared their struggle about their own sexual behaviors that were causing them problems in their life, harming their relationships, threatening their jobs, making them feel bad about themselves. And they started to support each other in a similar model that someone in AA or some other 12-step program might. And so that's where, in different parts of the country, in Minnesota, in Massachusetts, in California, these 12-step programs around compulsive sexual behaviors rose. And because they started in that format, when the partners, spouses, loved ones of those men and women who had those compulsive sexual behaviors needed support, they followed the same model that Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous had for spouses and family members and friends, like Al-Anon. Al-Anon is a program for the loved ones and the family and friends of an alcoholic. It gives them support. It teaches them how not to get pulled in to the craziness. It teaches them to look at their own reactions and to take responsibility for their reactions while detaching with love from the active alcoholic. And so partners of sex addicts started to use that as a model. But after a while, that became the primary way that therapists would treat spouses or partners of sex addicts in what we call the co-addict or the codependency model. The only thing is that there's a difference between what it feels like if your spouse is drinking alcoholically and how personal or unpersonal that feels to if your spouse has been cheating on you and lying about it and how personal that feels. And so in Al-Anon with alcoholics or in the similar program for substance abuse, the partners or the family members or the friends are looking at themselves while disconnecting a little from their active alcoholic. They're taking some responsibility for their reactions. But when a man or a woman has been cheated on and lied to repeatedly, and you try to tell them to take responsibility for their role in that, it wounds them again. And so after a while, people weren't having any more of that. Partners were like, I'm not getting blamed for something that I didn't do. And so one program, for example, on the slide here you'll see, it's called COSA, became a 12-step support program for co-sex addicts, meaning the partners or spouses of sex addicts. And women would go to this and men would go there, and it still exists. And many of them got support, but also many of them felt harmed by it. They felt gaslit, that they were being told to look at their role in their spouse's abusive, entitled, secret sexual lives when they had no idea. And many therapists adopted this model of co-addict or codependency to treat the partner. And I've had in my office, as some of you may have as well, partners who have been treated like this and have shared how traumatizing it was for them not only to be hurt, but now when they're coming for help, to be told that there's a level of their own responsibility for the harm that was done to them. And to be honest, this is how I was trained. Because up until only about 10 years ago, 12 years ago at the most, this was the common best practice in this field. That we supported the betrayed partner, but we also thought, well, what about them was attracted to a person who couldn't be fully intimate and had to have a secret sexual life? Something in their past. They have to look at their relationship with their father or their own history. Because if they were fully healthy, they wouldn't be with that person. And that's the way we approached it. And unfortunately, I have to say that it probably harmed many partners. In fact, I remember the first case of a partner that I had. I was seeing the husband, and he would come in and say, my wife is not having it. She was seeing a colleague at the practice I was at the time. We were both treating them. And she finally said, I'm not coming here to be told that it's my fault, what my husband did. And I thought, this is crazy, because I was so sure that this was the way to do it. And over time, a new model emerged from different people like Barbara Steffens and Dr. Omar Minwala, who's in Los Angeles. And what they started to do is to look at it not as the partner is somewhat at fault, but they started to look at it from a lens of trauma, that the betrayal from one person to another is traumatic in itself. And they took this from a concept that was developed in the 90s as trauma research and theory exploded by Jennifer Freud and Judith Herman, who talked about betrayal trauma, what happens when a parent betrays their child. And so when a parent doesn't provide safety the way that a child needs, or a parent doesn't provide the things that a parent is supposed to, they've betrayed their responsibilities. And they did research that the greater the relationship, the more significant the relationship is between the two people, the greater impact and devastation the betrayal is. So they define betrayal trauma as it occurs when people or institutions that a person depends on for survival or emotional survival violate that person's trust or well-being, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual abuse. And the reason why they say people or institutions, as we'll see, is because they're both harmful. So people could be a mother or father who doesn't protect their child from the other parent who might be abusing them. That would be a betrayal in itself, let alone the parent who's doing the abuse. But many people who've leaned into their synagogue or their church or their community at large to be trusting of it, to rely on it for safety. And when someone in that community betrays them, as we know from the news that it's happened in basically every community at different times, that's a betrayal as well. So betrayal trauma began looking at the betrayal from a parent to a child because of the intimate nature and the importance of that bond. It's the most important bond between a child and their one or two primary caregivers. And because of the closeness, that's what creates the great, great amount of pain. And so here's a quote that I love that I'm going to quote a couple times during this course by Michelle Mays, who's a therapist out of Leesburg, Virginia. And she has a practice called Partner Hope that deals with betrayal trauma, and tons of literature, books that she's written, as well as a lot of really wonderful blog posts that I'd highly recommend. And she says that a couple, a romantic couple, is more than just two people. A couple becomes one organism. The two people come together as one unit, one organism, which regulates itself. And the idea is that our brains and our nervous systems of our romantic partners impact each other. So if you look at the slide on the screen and you look at that baby looking up at her mother and the intense look in her eyes, we all know, if you've looked into a baby's face, the reaction that they have. And this quote by Winnicott, that when I look, I'm seen, so I exist, talks about that we derive our worth as our person because our caregivers take the time to look at us. So when we feel seen by them, we're worthy of their attention. That's how we develop self-worth as we go from being babies and infants into children and young adults. And also, when a baby cries and its mother or its father pick it up and hold it to its chest and calm the baby down, the parent's nervous system is regulating the nervous system of that baby. A parent has the ability to regulate and calm the nervous system of their child. And that's really what we do again later on in life with our romantic partners. When our romantic partners look at us and see us, we feel so connected and we feel worthwhile. And also, if you come in the door from a hard day at work and your partner or spouse gives you a hug, it's like, oh, it regulates you. Their calmness calms you. Or if you've ever walked in the house and without seeing anybody, you can feel the energy. Something's up. Someone's angry or someone's upset. That's because you are co-regulating with your romantic partner. And so this next picture here talks about co-regulation, which is that it's not just a parent to a child whose brain and nervous system helps regulate them. And, by the way, when a child is upset, the parent's nervous system is activated, but also with our romantic partners, that our brains and our nervous systems co-regulate each other. So you walk into the house and you can feel relaxed because the house is relaxed. You sense it. You can feel the energy. And if you walk in the house and your spouse is upset or your partner is angry, without even seeing them, you can feel the temperature right away. That's co-regulation. So in a paper they wrote in 2006, Jennifer Freud and her partner wrote that the closeness of the relationship between two people and the trust that's implied in that relationship can have a greater impact if betrayal happens. So because of the nature of a romantic partner, where you're one organism, when you discover or find out that that person who helps regulate you, who helps you feel soft and safe and secure in the world, has now harmed you, all sorts of things happen. It's devastating. Jennifer Acker, my co-teacher on this topic, she describes it and tells partners that what they're experiencing, in a sense, is their own 9/11 that's happening right now. Their life is crashing down around them. Whatever they've known, the way they've looked at their partner, the life they thought they had, is falling down. They're standing in the rubble and still in the smoke in complete shock. If you remember the images from the TV of 9/11 and the people watching what was happening and the looks on their faces, besides the fear, you saw the look of shock. They didn't know what was happening. And also similar to 9/11, we didn't know for a while what exactly was going on. Are more things happening? We heard about a plane in Pennsylvania and then the Pentagon, all this other stuff. It continued to unfold. And that's what's happening to a betrayed partner. When they find something out, they don't know, like, oh, this is what I have to deal with now. They're in shock and it's still happening to them as they're in shock. And so they're waiting to find out how much more is there going to be. So some of the impacts of betrayal trauma are hypervigilance, because as a person's world has been brought down around them, all they want to do is feel safe. They need to feel safe, because if they can feel safe, they can stop hurting. And the best way to feel safe is to make sure you don't get hurt. And so many people, like we'll see with many trauma survivors, they go into a state of hypervigilance, reading people's faces, reading their facial expressions, looking at what's around them, seeing if there's danger lurking in the darkness in order to make sure that they're safe. They also feel a lot of rage. How could this happen? Rage at the person that did it to them. Rage at people around the person who did it to them, who might have enabled it. Rage at themselves for not catching it or for letting it happen. Quote, letting it happen. They might have intrusive thoughts, anxiety, depression, difficulty sleeping, suicidal ideation, or even suicide attempts. They might have strong emotional reactions to many other things. Flashbacks, impulsivity, and they're going to feel often a high sense of isolation. So this chart up on the board, I borrowed from Janina Fisher, who's done several courses here as well. And she took it from two other researchers. And these are the effects, the symptoms and effects of trauma. And she uses a quote when she uses this chart, which is, trauma doesn't have memories, it has symptoms. And so people can figure out their trauma by looking at their symptoms. In this case, with betrayal trauma, often, not at the beginning, but afterwards, there's memories too, because they're functioning as an adult, as opposed to a trauma from a childhood. But if you look at these symptoms that are of trauma that are on the screen now, these are the symptoms that people saw that betrayed partners were having too. And they started to say, oh, these women or men who are coming into my office, they're showing these reactions to their discovering their spouse's secret sexual lives. Their reactions that they're showing are the same reactions that we deal with when we deal with trauma. And so they started to see that this person is having traumatic reactions.